Welcome to North Point Farm. We started here operating in the late 1800s, so we've been here well over 100 years. There's three of my brothers with me, and then we're fortunate enough now to have four of the next generation that have come back here, and they are also employed full-time at the farm.
Well, Kevin, this is truly a family farm, and as you said, a multi-generational farm, and I think that's fairly typical of most of the dairy farms we see around the Commonwealth of Virginia. They're passed on from generation to generation, and like your family, they've been milking cows a long time.
Yes, that's the beauty of it. You get to work with your mom and dad, and then you do it yourself, and then you get to teach your children and see how they excel. And it's very delightful to see the different aspects each family member brings to an operation.
Well, you've been dairy farming all your life, Kevin, but this year, 2018, I know has been what some would call a tumultuous year. It's been a year that has not been the best for Virginia dairy farms. Bring us up to speed on where we are now as an industry here in Virginia.
Well, it's been a very interesting, very challenging year. Most everybody is either at or under the cost of production. So we're seeing some people exit. Others are just eating into equity to stay alive. The biggest problem is we're climbing a mountain and we can't see over it right now. We don't know whether it's going to keep on going straight up. We don't know what it's going to look like when we hit the other side. And so the uncertainty of it makes it very challenging.
Uncertain, boy, it's a good word to use during these times. We recently contacted the Virginia Department of Agriculture and Consumer Services office in Richmond, and they advised us that in the first 6 months of this calendar year, 2018, that we've lost 36 dairy farms around the Commonwealth of Virginia. And I thought about that, losing 36 dairy farms. That might not sound like a lot to some folks, but that is losing a dairy farm, one farm every 5 days. And that, in my personal opinion, that's a significant situation. Why are people electing to get out of the dairy sector?
Well, I guess the uncertainty of it. We do not know where we're going to land, and some of them that are getting out, I think, are using a different judgment. They're trying to get out before they eat up all their equity, so they have a little bit of money to live on. Others, we don't know nothing else. We've always been taught how to grow, how to produce, but we've never been taught how to exit. And that, to me, is going to be the next challenge, is for us to figure out how some of us are going to exit.
Well, exit the dairy sector.
Yes.
I don't want to imply that these dairy farms are going out of business. They're simply having their permits for milking cows withdrawn, and ultimately we hope and we pray that they will go into another segment of Virginia agriculture, whether it be cattle, poultry, wine, grapes. There are a lot of opportunities in Virginia agriculture these days. Of the farmers that you're talking with, what do you think they're looking for? What's the next step?
They're looking for something or other that they can make a profit, not work 100 hours a week, and make a livelihood that's doing something good for their fellow men. So many things you do that we're not sure that is the best, but they're doing what they want to do to make everything good for the next generation and make a good living. The cost of health insurance right now is very prohibitive on a lot of dairy farms, and so there's a lot of people today that do not have health insurance because they can't afford it.
I want to go back to why some people are electing to get out of the dairy sector. I've heard a lot of different reasons: consolidation, consumer demand. Can you talk a little bit about consumer demand?
Well, in the Southeast, we've always been deficit of milk, but now we are doing a better job, taking better care of the cows, and so fluid milk consumption has drastically dropped. And a lot of that starts with the younger kids. And we have went to where we thought we could not feed any fat in the milk, whole milk, to kids in school. That's where we teach them how to drink milk, the nutrition value of it. And the last few years, the water, I call it white colored water because it has no taste. And if you don't have something that tastes good, you're not going to consume it.
Kevin, do you think, and we're talking with Kevin Phillips, former immediate past president, Virginia State Dairymen's Association. We're here in Waynesboro, Virginia at North Point Farm. Do you think that the consumer is, do you think they're trying alternatives to milk? And the label might actually say milk, but it never came from a dairy animal. Do you think there's some of that that may be having an impact?
Oh, absolutely. They've done a good job of advertising, but it's not as healthy as whole milk. And so social media has played a huge part. Whatever's on social media is the Bible. And we know that very few people understand what whole milk is. Whole milk is 3.5% butter fat. We have never been able to market it at 3.5% fat. If we could sell a lot.
Talk a little bit more about consumer demand for other dairy products. My understanding is that when it comes to yogurt and cheese, the demand in that segment is excellent.
Yes, they love the yogurt coming up now with the drinkable yogurt. Cheese has been just booming, and there's new artistic cheeses that you can make. Believe it or not, the biggest one is butter consumption. They have finally decided that the margarine is not good for you. So butter consumption is, I read an article, is up to where it was 25 years ago as far as consumption of butter. So we're doing good there, but the fluid end that we are focused on in the Southeast was always deficit of milk, so we never built butter and cheese plants. We are now actively in the state of Virginia working to get a butter or a cheese plant to locate to our area.
So if we could bring in a big-time cheese manufacturing facility or Greek yogurt or something like that, that would be good for Virginia dairy farms?
Oh, absolutely.
Oh, wow.
Because we have maybe, I don't know, 5 or 6 processors of fluid milk left in the state. Milk moves a lot. A lot of milk in our area goes to North Carolina because they bring milk out of Pennsylvania into Virginia. And Virginia itself probably uses about all the milk that we supply. But when you go up north and bring milk down, you domino it down, is what they say. Because when you get down to Florida right now, they are really deficit of milk because of the heat stress on cows.
Kevin, we've talked a lot about the first 6 months of 2018, and it has not been a good year so far for Virginia dairy producers. What do you foresee for the next 6 months?
We need a win in the dairy industry. Something or another to prick morale up. It's just like a baseball or a sports team that goes 0 for whatever. As soon as you get that first win, morale will pick up. That's what we need in the dairy industry, is a morale booster. We thought we was going to see that. The mover prices had started moving up in April and early May, but now they've declined right back down. And so I see more of the same for the next 6 months of the year. And again, we cannot see over top of the mountain. It's just like driving your kids down the road and they say, when we gonna get there, Dad? We don't know.
Don't know. Lack of control, and it's always been that situation from my understanding with the Virginia dairy industry. The Margin Protection Program, this is a federal program that was rolled out by the USDA and the federal government, I believe over a year ago, and then they recently revised it to supposedly make it more attractive and more beneficial to the dairy producers. What are you hearing from the farmers about the MPP, the Margin Protection Program?
Well, it's a program set up for a dairy that is basically 200 cows and smaller. It is designed to help them compete with the bigger dairies. It is, when it was first rolled out, it was a disaster. They revamped it, and it's a Band-Aid for the smaller producers, but it's, in my estimation, it's done went too long before we put a Band-Aid on. We done about bled to death. And so the new that come in the two Senate and the House bill. They're in conference right now. It didn't change it much. So again, it'll be a Band-Aid. It might help some of the small producers, but it's not a fix-all for sure.
Mm-hmm. Just a couple of minutes remaining in this segment of the television program, Kevin, but I wanted to ask your advice to your fellow dairy farmers. You've been a leader in the dairy industry for a number of years. This is a situation that I think most of them have never seen before. What would be your advice to those farmers?
Well, first of all, have faith in what you do. Sit down with the family, have a family conversation. Let them know where you're at. If you got younger kids, you just have to involve them in the finances and say, hey, this is where we're at. We owe X and we're worth X. Are you willing to lose more to hopefully make more? Or do we need to exit the dairy business before we lose our equity? And it is a challenge. There's no right or wrong answer. And you gotta have faith, and you got to take time. Don't work yourself to death. Mom and Dad, take time to be with your kids.
Take a vacation and go fishing every once in a while.
That's exactly right.
And then the phrase that you mentioned to me, it all boils down to risk management.
Yes.
You've got to manage that risk, and if the numbers don't work, they don't work.
That's right.
Thank you very much for talking with us and bringing us all up to date on 2018, a year in the Virginia dairy industry that has not been going well. We certainly hope and pray that our dairy farm families have a better second half of 2018.